Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us here today. We are seeing the EQ Resources Limited presentation and webinar and discussion here with the CEO of EQ Resources, Mr. Kevin MacNeill, and the exploration manager up there at Mt Carbine, which is Tony Bainbridge. So I'm going to hand it across to Kevin to walk us through the program, and then there'll be some time for questions at the end. Good morning, and over to you, Tony. Kevin, sorry, mate.
No worries. Yeah, good morning to you too, Peter, and good morning to everybody. I understand we have a fairly sizable crowd this morning, so welcome everybody, and thanks for taking the time to join us. There has been lots of news as of late, so we thought it would be timely to start to update everybody on what's happening up here at Mt Carbine. We are coming live from Mt Carbine this morning, and if you can see our new renovations in our office, for those that have been with us for a while and watching these webinars, you can see as part of the early works program, we managed to beat back the cockroaches and termites from this 1970s building and renovate it up nicely. Disclaimer. So EQ, why invest in EQ, or why keep your investment in EQ Resources, right? So I guess, as you've seen late, we are fully funded. We'll talk a little bit later on about all of these topics, but I think it's a project that's very de-risked, and I'll try to see if I can elaborate a little bit more on that. You know, it's a brownfields project, so we're currently in production, we're currently producing, and we have positive market conditions for tungsten as a critical metal. Obviously up here at Mt Carbine, we have excellent infrastructure, power, roads running through the site, very good, close to towns. I think the one that Tony's going to hit on a little bit later is just the growing life of mine and converting the resource to reserves. We're going to try to elaborate on that a little bit more. And I'd like to think that, you know, what we've said since the new management has taken over the operation, that we're living up to what we've said we are going to do. And I hope to come across with that and show you the timeline for development and construction. If we are a little bit late, it's for the interest of the shareholders. So this is Mt Carbine open cut and modernization. This is what we're really going to focus on, which is the mainstay of the operation. And this is a brand new shot as of the weekend there that we're getting the phase one early works up and running. You'll see where we came from over the last year or two and where we're at today. I think we are Australia's only primary tungsten producer, and I'll discuss a little bit later about tungsten and why we think it has a big life ahead of it as well. We have a very high grade resource in the tungsten market and expandable. We're not going to talk a whole lot about the quarry today. We are still delivering product on a daily basis to several different customers, but we do have multiple revenue streams, and as part of that circular economy that we talk about in the green aggregates is quite critical to us. Very low cost expansion because we are a brownfield site. I think that's a real, it just helps us with reducing the capex on these projects, and as we discuss in the presentation, I think that'll come a lot clearer. I think the other important thing is, you know, we've kind of stabilized the board over the last year or so. We have a great functioning board, very, very active. You know, we are in discussions almost on a weekly type basis with the board, and so it is, and everybody has their various strengths on our board, from capital markets to trading and development, and obviously myself and Tony on the project development. So yeah, so you can see the rest of the share price, and I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of that. So Mt Carbine, I guess for just a lot of you have seen this slide, but just for some new shareholders, and there's been a fair number that's come on the register in the last few weeks. So we're basically just up the range, the Rex Range from Port Douglas. It's about a 45, 50-minute drive into work. We draw our workforce from Gelatin, Mariba, Port Douglas, Mosman, Mount Malloy. All those towns are in striking distance for us. So we don't have camp accommodations on site. We don't need them, which is a huge benefit to the project. Yeah, so I guess the other important part of this project is our partner Cronimet, which is on the waste dump and the tailings. And they're also look after our offtake. They've been excellent. They take our product. They've been shopping it around the globe for the last year and a half and trying to secure long-term strategic partnerships, which again, we'll discuss a little bit later. And again, just concluding, we did finish the bankable feasibility study. It was on a minor portion of the overall project, but yet very important to get into production and not dilute shareholders. And again, this is a strategy that we took. I talked about it in the last webinar, is to get enough of the feasibility done that we're able to finance the operation. So our values in the company and culture, again, as I discussed on the last webinar, we've been really working a lot on the safety aspect of the project. And it's one of our key values is to act safe and for the employees to feel safe. And we have been without a lost time accident now for almost a year, and the stats are growing. We do embrace difference in culture, and we have several on site. Just tread lightly is just our environmental footprint and the work that we're doing around the circular economy as well. And digging deep is just to constantly use new technology and to learn. And these are really some of the core values that we workshopped at the beginning when we come into the project to look at that. We collaborate a lot with various partners in the sensor-based sorting, and Plot Logic, and Tomra, and various other partnerships. Toddy's on the mechanical side. I'm a big believer that you don't have to have all the strengths yourself. You can share a little bit of the pie with some of the local and other partnerships. And then I'd like to say, leading with integrity. We do try to make our best effort to tell the shareholders and to disclose as much as possible that we can, and to be accountable for those disclosures. ESG, I guess we did discuss a fair bit about that. We did workshop the ESG component, and this is a very important part of it. On the governance, I think you'll see more interannual reports coming, that there'll be more accountability, if you will, around governance. That's one of the requests from one of our large shareholders, is to report, even though we may be doing it, we're not reporting it. So that was one of the things. Environmentally, we've just put a large amount of our early works money into environmental permitting. And in saying that, it was water wells and monitoring wells around the site to make sure that we are not putting any groundwater pollution around. So we also started a social working group on site with the employees who volunteered, that had a passion for the social responsibility piece. And we have a committee for sponsorships and various things that we're actually quite proud of. Obviously, the jobs, we're at about 65 people, and training up local people in particular. Tungsten. Now, tungsten is a critical mineral. As many of you have seen, the government had given us a government grant to accelerate the operation. And why is this critical, or why is the government putting the money towards us and tungsten in particular? So we are a the only tungsten producer in the country. And tungsten goes into so many manufacturing things. In the Western world, it's a very big concern to have production. Tungsten mines are they're not the easiest mines in the world by nature. And I think with our technology, we've overcome a lot of the problems that historically mining narrow vein deposits by putting 3 or 4 veins together, putting them through the sorting machines and taking out just the tungsten, redoing the waste dumps that gives you a stable base as well. So there's uses of tungsten are becoming more and more into the EV pool with semiconductors, specialty alloys. Tungsten has very specific characteristics. Military and defense is obviously high on everybody's list right now as the NATO countries are upscaling their military equipment. Tungsten plays a very critical role in military and construction equipment as well. So I think in the global tungsten market, we've seen 2 major tungsten mines that are on the curve here that has been listed, that they're accounting for this supply in the Western world coming in this reddish brown is new supply coming in from tungsten mines, and both those mines were factored into this. So we see that both Russia coming offline, what effect that's going to have. Russia have a significant portion of tungsten that goes into the market. That coming offline, 2 Western mines coming offline, I think it bodes well for the price of tungsten to be increasing its mine life. So tungsten it's a very specialty metal, and without it, the Western world will suffer. So people will be scrambling for more and more tungsten as time goes on. So funding for the overall project here and the expansion into the open pit in particular, it's seen things happen fast in the last couple of weeks with all the announcements coming out. But the acceleration grant is something that we had been working on for quite a while, really since January, in the financing. And it was a real key to us to show support and for our shareholders to get behind us once that grant dropped. And because of the overall aspect of it, it dropped our capital component significantly. The other one was Sandvik. So these were very strategic, is to have the government behind you, and then as well as your major supplier for crushing and screening equipment behind you as well. That plays a key component with Sandvik now kicking in 4.8 million into it. Cronimet also came to the party with their share, putting in 4.2 million with a back-to-back with a tier 1 tungsten off-taker that takes our product that we have been selling to them, have been trialing in the past with this particular group. That also extends to some technical expertise that's going back and forth. So we're looking forward to that relationship, and that comes out of the Cronimet offtake interest as well. So one of our directors also kicked in a loan as well at 8% interest. It was very welcomed as we were waiting on the government money to drop, and also the early works, which will show you that how it has been spent as well as part of the feasibility budget. So most of you that were old investors would have seen me advance this timeline over my period from back here, where we went through the feasibility study. We're going through the gravity upgrade to get to 1,000 tons. We finished the feasibility study in Q4. We secured the financing. We did the underground scoping document. We did the early works upgrade in the crushing plant, which you'll see some pictures of, and processing the mineralized stockpiles. And on the bottom here, you'll see the various permitting stages that we went through to achieve at each of these levels. We have one more for the placement and extraction out of the open pit that we've been working with the government on. And this is really the only part of the project that's that could be not in our control for timeline. Let's put it that way. We're absolutely convinced there's no issue, and the timeline that we'll be submitting is here at the end of Q2, and we'll be waiting for the approval, which is generally about 3 months. So we have been working in early engagement. That's what all the water wells are all about, and the monitoring. But it is a big document. But it is an amendment to the existing permit, not a new permit. It's just an amendment. So this was the 1 million ton early works plant that you'll see here down in the bottom. This was the overall full plant. So we took a strategy of putting in several pieces of equipment while we were waiting for the financing to get done. So we did some equity and we're able to put that in, and I'm pretty pleased that we're seeing with that work, the recovery of tungsten almost at 80%. Recovery out of the existing plant. So for those of you that would have seen this picture in the past, well, you can now look on the ground and see where we're at. So we have to put some belts on and a wire and a couple of motors, but we're good to go. And this unit here, operating 24/7, will give us our 1 million ton a year operation. This will be some of these conveyors and some of the screen will be used in the phase 2 with the big Sandvik equipment that's coming in, and then some of it will be left for the quarry, like the cone crusher and the scalper. And the big point of this is it's a wet screen. I'll show you some of the stats that we went through the rainy season and how it drops, because we have to screen to 6 millimeters and it becomes very sticky on the screens. But now this will be sprayed wet and take that problem away for the next wet season. These are I'm just going to flick through some of these pictures. You've probably seen some of these on LinkedIn, and I would just, like I said, encourage everybody to try to follow us on LinkedIn. We do put up a fair number of pictures on the LinkedIn profile, and follow the developments. So these are putting up the power lines and installing the power for the new crushing plant. One thing I would like to say is that because of supply chain issues, our guys, our maintenance team climbed in, hired an additional couple of Boilermakers, set up the workshop for fabrication, and this is the output from that fabrication shop is the conveyors that they made, and they're made 100% here on site. This is the new Tomra sorter. Tomra was here last week commissioning it. We still have to make a chute to adjust the conveyor coming into the machine, but it's all good to go. That second sorter is now set up and fully functional. Again, we did use local contractors for the concrete works on site as well, and Townsville Rolco setting up some of the conveyors with the crane each and assembly. Some of our own maintenance team here on the right, just assembling some of the conveyor rollers and tail pulleys. And yeah, so we're quite proud of the work that the team has done here on site. And if you can just get a scale of this screen, is about probably 3 or 4 times bigger than the one we have been using. And that other one was a dry screen. So we'll be spraying this. And then the other thing is pumping this from the bottom of this screen. This now gets pumped directly down to the processing plant about 1 kilometer away. And that eliminates the need for taking fines across the road and trucking it down. So it'll save on operating costs as well. Just a couple other shots to give you the scale of the operation that we put up. So we didn't want to lose sight with all the new construction that we are currently still operating amongst all the operation and all the construction phase of the operation. So we do, this is just current on the pad this morning. We took this picture. We're getting ready for a shipment here on the 18th, but these are just some concentrate at about 52-53% tungsten concentrate in those bags. And these are this is the table section on the down in the bottom left corner. Some of you would have seen this this graph before. We've added to it a little bit. We are currently at 500 to 750 tons a year, and then shortly when this new plant kicks in, we'll be at that 900 to 1200. And this big leap is when the open pit kicks in, which will be sometime around first quarter of this year. The open pit will kick in, and we'll be hitting some of these months up to significant tonnages coming through the plant, depending on the grade. So I think we're pretty much on target with what we had said we were going to do, and we continue to deliver. And I guess this is probably the big reason that I would say that you should be invested in EQ Resources, and continue to be with the fine resources that Tony will tell you about shortly. So production wise, in December, we had ramped up and put the power in, and we're ramping up some of the sorting capability. And you could see December, we were climbing up to 40 tons a month. And obviously the rain hit in January, February. We're doing some of the construction works and integrating the sorter in between here. And then the rain started to dry up in March again. And then we had our record production in April, where we were 47 tons of 50% equivalent, and quite happy that we will be on target for that again this month, and then climbing up after that when the new equipment kicks in earnest. So these are just sort of snippets of it that's coming online. And again, you can see the ramp up in the sorting capability as well, which is directly related to production. So this is still one sorter with the increased power running 24/7. Now we got two sorters, which will eat twice the material. So we've seen this one in the last presentation of the feasibility study, and this is really what it's all about, is in this green box over here. Why the big spike is when the open pit kicks off. And this is what we wanted to do, is get this project kicked off. This represents 14.5% of the total resource that we're looking at. You've seen us come out with the scoping document. We're moving ahead with the pre-feasibility study on the underground. Tony's doing a lot of work on the western extension, which should push this out. And then also there's a low-grade halo with inside the existing open pit that we're redoing that resource, as well as the increase in the tungsten price, which will help to push all this line. And the whole intention is to keep this line coming across and not dropping to where it is here. This was just a feasibility work that we had done. So the underground looks pretty good. We probably are going to be opening it up and taking a look at it here in the near future, and continue as part of the pre-feasibility work. So the BFS is 2,200 MTUs. This was the existing life of mine. It was 12 years. The cost per MTU, which where you can see we're on the lower quartile on the price per MTU. Capital cost numbers are ridiculously low now with the grant in here, and the offtake that puts it. So the NPV will climb, the IRR will climb, and so yeah, we're quite excited about the new increases that will be coming your way in the near future. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch seats with Tony. He's just going to take you through a few of the geology and some of the recent press release numbers that you've seen.
Thanks, Kevin, on that, and welcome everybody. Of course, most of the development we have started off with a base of resources. So I want to run through and give you an update of where we sit as a company on that. Just on this slide, it's kind of useful to show some of these very high-grade veins we see, which we call king veins. Tungsten has two minerals. There's a black tungsten and there's a white tungsten in there as well. So we capture both. And it's got some unique properties, as Kevin mentioned in his slide there, that make tungsten very valuable. I guess one of the good side benefits of processing tungsten, because of its sheer weight, it's a very heavy mineral, is that we don't use any chemicals whatsoever in our plant. So we're very proud of that as well. So let me run through some of the resource work we've done. Last year, we completed, EQR did put out its first maiden hard rock resource. There were resources done back in 2012, but we updated that after an extensive phase of drilling. That drilling was focused in and around the pit because we identified that most of the good resource still sat going down to depth and required to be drilled out. As Kevin pointed out, the current pit expansion is only going to take out 14.4% of this resource we have currently, which is 9.2 million tonnes of 0.63. So it's only taking a small portion. Our job in the department goes into the work plan that we're doing for 2022, and that is to continue to bring additional resources in, but particularly to look at where resources might add to immediate pit life. And we'll go through that. So when we did that resource, we drilled enough to give us that initial bankable feasibility stuff. Drilling's expensive, but you want to get going and get cash flow and production. So that's what we're orientated about. At the moment, only 30% of our resources in indicated, and that flows through into reserves. So our plans for the coming, or this current year and into next year, is to continue to upgrade that inferred resource to indicated, but focus particularly on what might extend that open cut beyond the current 3 years. We have some exciting new targets I'll show you about. Where do those resources sit? I guess the cross section shows it well here. You can see the existing pit that was mined by the Roach brothers for 10 years. They took out about 22 million tonne of rock in that pit. That mined approximately the same amount as the next pit we're doing here, which is shown in the blue outline here. So they mined 15% of the resource. We're mining another 14% here. And then you can see that we've got a lot of area to look for. What we discover is that as we're drilling closer, we identify a lot of these high grade shoots that are extending. So we get a very good conversion when we did it as inferred and then we drilled out to indicated. We found that we could identify and start to link the high grade, and that adds to your resource base. What we've been doing the start of this year, we wanted to look at one of the areas, which is the western area. We call it Dyke West. We could see that the king veins were continuing out in that area. So we planned a series of 10 holes out there. And we were pleased that our forecasts of where the veins might be turned out to be correct. And we're continuing to see the high grade going out there. So we've added about another 250, 300 meters to the western extent of mineralization. As yet, we're not sure whether it'll be into the open cut extension or it may yet be underground. We're going to remodel that shortly. So the resource in the king veins, what we've also found is that they don't stop. So these high grade veins are continuing further west, and it'll be the subject of further programs. this is a wolfram mineral here, and you can see when we put it under ultraviolet light, we get the glow that we're familiar with, and that's very beneficial in how we now at site can predict grades very well just on the spot without assaying because of this feature that scheelite has. What do we expect from that western area? If you look at this diagram, we used a lower cut to emphasize where the mineralization is. So within these golden shaped bodies are high grade king veins. But when you use a lower cut, you see easier the extent of the mineralization. So we've only received 5 of the 10 holes we drilled out here, and they all hit quite good mineralization. So we're very excited to see if that can push our pit out and give us another year or 2 of open cut. The other thing in here, when I mentioned about underground, this is the existing underground decline that they put in. They put it into about this point, went down and around a corner. So it's very proximal to where this mineralization is. So if we can't get it into open cut, we certainly could get it into underground, a lot of it on the king vein basis. We do like this lower cut because it does add additional tungsten to our deposit, and we'll be modeling it with a lower cut. A few things have changed. Tungsten price has gone up significantly. Our strip ratios and things are looking good. So we're able to probably lower the 0.25% of our resource down to a lower figure. I mean, most of the world is mining in open cut about 0.2%. So with the prices today, that's starting to look very economic. So there will be an ore that we consider our medium grade ore, and that'll be stockpiled. And as the prices look good, we'll run that through the sorters. So it does add significantly to the metal, and that's in the early years. So that adds a lot to our NPVs in the future. If we look at where we're going on a regional scale, we're dealing down, all the work we've done so far is down in this blue area here on the photo here, and that covers probably, and as we've said, we're only looking at 15% of the area of the resource in that area. So, but what we do know is the veins are in packages, and they're extending to the northwards within the favourable rock horizons, and this is a very large system. So, you know, we not only think that we'll have many years within this blue area, but we're working actively to find other major zones within these packages. How are we doing that? We're doing that with detailed geophysics, soils. We've got some new technology, as Kev referred to, this plot logic, which is a new way to discover tungsten, and we currently have it on site, and it's showing some early signs of being very useful to identify tungsten in the field and in the pit and in the core very quickly, and an efficient technique. So the tungsten here is very structurally contained, so we do a lot of work in geology to identify where other zones may be. So I think exploration here in the future will potentially find 2 or 3 other of these similar sized targets as Mt Carbine itself. This is I think the final slide of my part, but it just shows in pictures where we're going for the next couple of years, and that is to continue mining this low-grade stockpile, of which we've got 12 million tonnes. We're taking 1 million tonne of that a year through the sorters, and that's working very effectively. And as you saw in those pictures, we're producing concentrate currently from that dump. What's going to happen, though, is that dump runs around the 0.075 to 0.1 grade. What we're going to do, and as you saw with Kevin and the financial spikes, is that we start to add 7 to 10 times that grade from the open cut. So here's the first 3 years in pictures. We bring out another 1 million tonnes, but its grade's about 0.83%. So, you know, we're going to have this huge jump when that comes on first quarter next year. So it is exciting times for us. We've got some very early high-grade ore sitting here at the bottom of the pit that while we're stripping around at the top, we can access that high-grade ore, and we're going to see a very marked change. One of the things that we're having to deal with in actual fact is that because of the high grade of that ore coming out of the pit. We have to dilute it, and this is where it's kind of handy to have the lower grade here, because you want a steady feed, and we're targeting a steady feed at around the 0.5% mark to go to our plant. So that's the summary of the immediate work we're doing. We're drilling out, and as Kev said, we've actually done a scoping study already, and that looks positive for the underground, and the board's given us approval to move that forward into pre-feasibility. So that's exciting, and hopefully we can start getting the value of that other 70% of our resource that sits there for underground. So I think that covers it, Kev. I'll put back to you.
Thank you, Tony. Greatly appreciate it. So I guess just wrapping up, we were looking to why should you be invested and why should you hold on to your shares in EQ Resources, is that we are Australia's only primary tungsten producer. Very, very strong economics and growing. And I think that's the big point, is that, look, you know, I'm trying to protect shareholder value here by not overcooking the resource and drilling the next 25 or 30 years of tungsten off by doing equity. I wanted to get into production, use the cash flow from production instead of shareholder funds to do that. It's a little maybe unconventional, but I've been around a long time and I've seen a lot of blowouts in the industry. I'd rather just kind of slowly ramp it up and not take a whole bunch of debt and a whole bunch of shareholder equity. Just do it like we are, just slowly easing into it, work the bugs out of it while it's small. And then once we go, then we know we're making the right decisions. We really do have a genuine ESG vision, and this has become very important in the overall global industry for our offtake partners of the tungsten. Government in Queensland, they really like what we're doing with this circular economy, using the waste from the sorters back into aggregate. We are working with TMR to get batch designs, mixed designs, getting it designated recyclable material, and to be able to utilize our quarry material in the future. So we are pushing ahead with a long-term vision of all the sorter waste that we will have available. It's already crushed down. BFS, we've harped on this, 14.4%. Don't need to harp on that again. Underground scoping docket. So I guess when I've talked to some of the larger funds, oh, it's your life of mine that concerns us. Don't be concerned by that. We are going to expand that life of mine. That's just a starter pit. But like I said, I think the measurable will be come out in the next bump will be in the next probably quarter, when we redo the economics on the Western extension. And when we look at the low grade halo material with inside the pit, I think the shareholders could expect an NPV bump at that time. So anyway, I wanted to leave some time for questions. I know we've kind of rushed through several of the other webinars, but if there is any questions, please feel free to send them through to Peter. He can explain how, and then if anybody else has any questions afterwards that we don't get to, please just send them through to Peter, and he'll direct them to myself or whoever the appropriate person is. And we'll really try to answer them the best of our ability. Last but not least, I want to reiterate one more time, LinkedIn is sort of our preferred platform for putting up interim news, construction. Anybody that's really interested to follow, I would really encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn.
Thanks, Kevin. That was a pretty good and comprehensive situation report from BFS right through to where you are today. And you covered about 4 questions which I had ready to ask already. And Tony's update was good too. One area that's impacted small resources companies into development has been global supply chain. You have seemed to have overcome that with actually manufacturing a lot of your, some of your equipment on site, and those long lead items that you need to get into production seem to be covered off at this stage.
Yeah, that's correct. We have suffered like everybody else. I would say, Peter, like supply of electrical kit that we've learned our lessons. I think the beauty of it is, like, and it's kind of hard to explain, but that equipment that you see that we've set up, that gives us the ability to even process the open pit material. We will just pull in a jaw crusher, a portable jaw crusher, while the Sandvik kit is getting installed and getting up and running. And that's the kit for the next 25 years of life, on the mine, is that we're putting in the new Sandvik kit. This kit that we've just put in, parts of it will go to the Sandvik section and parts will stay with the quarry. So I think it's really important. And I think our guys have been very clever. Our maintenance team have been very clever in helping us overcome some of the challenges that have been in the industry in the last little bit.
And further to that too, Kevin, Tony mentioned that you're proud of the use of minimal to, or maybe it was zero chemicals. Producing tungsten, how better is it to produce tungsten than if you're in the nickel or copper or gold game? Is it a simpler process?
Yeah, very, very simple. It's just a straight up gravity, like Tony alluded to. The tungsten has a density of about 6.2 to 6.5. And we just use jigs, tables, very standard technology to extract it. In saying that, it's not, I think we have done some unique features that we've incorporated into our plant that we've learned over the last year. And this is when we talk about de-risking, I think it's really critical that for the shareholders to understand, look, we've gone through several different pieces of kit that are very small that we've changed out, and that kind of worked and kind of didn't over the last year, chopped it, threw it out of the plant, put other pieces in that worked, right, to give us better recovery to a point where we're happy now. And the plant is producing 1,000 tons a day, day in and day out. And so you can't underestimate that. With a new operation, it becomes very difficult if you're starting afresh and you've taken a gamble on lab scale test work coming in, and a lot of people break their pick. But like I say, that's the way I like to do it. I like to pilot it. It's probably the metallurgist in me that has the ability as the CEO now to be able to direct the company to do that. But that's how I like to de-risk.
And making it more efficient is a key to success. You're located, as you said, you don't need to fly in people. You don't have to have dongers on site. They can all go home at night. You've got a pretty mature industrial area, Cairns, for repairs and maintenance, and a deep source of contractors. That must make things a little bit easier when you're operating here. You're not in the middle of the Kalgoorlie Desert or in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is a huge advantage. We have spent a lot of time training local people, and we've really focused our efforts on employee retention and safety. And the retention wise is sort of the first question that we ask people in interviews is, do you want to live in this area? Are you from here? Do you want to live in this area? So we've taken that approach. Initially, we started with hiring mining professionals, and we've taken an approach now of going heavy on training of locals that want to be in the area, that are clever and have skills in construction, let's say, as opposed to mining, that want to get converted into mining skills. So we've really put a big push on that, and it's been working for us. Our retention has come way up.
Yeah, well, BHP used to say that they were a people business that produced minerals and get that quotient right, and it's a long way to success. Kevin, the government grant, what impact did that have to the numbers, and how impactful did you see that in making it much more profitable?
Yeah, it really gave a lot of confidence to accelerate. It was the purpose of that grant, was the government wanted to accelerate critical metals. Well, it certainly has for us. I can tell you that. It's been unbelievable. As soon as we got that done, then the offtake came in as well, right on the heels of it. We already had Sandvik done prior to that, but it really pushed the offtake piece. over the top when that came in. So it was a big push to us.
And that made a significant impact to your internal rate of return number too, which looks very attractive now.
Yeah, that's still the old number. I think when the new numbers come out, you'll see it'll be even higher. And the overall cost of our debt is something like 3% that we do have. It's very low.
Yeah, amazing times. A good time to be in this business and a good time to be kicking off. So as far as operating goes, one question that's come in here is, when do you expect the second ore sorter and wet screen to be in production? I think we were looking at it just earlier on.
I'm really hoping to have everything running by the end of this month, Peter. I'm pushing everybody as hard as possible to get that done. We have an Oz IMM tour here on the 18th, so certainly want to get the sorter operating by that time. The second one, it is operating, but getting the conveyor into it and up and operating. And then the remaining, putting the belts on and wiring in the rest of the motors is not going to take too much. So we hope to be done by the end of May, and then that'll give us the bump that we need in production to make a big difference on our cash in the company. And we'll be certainly cash flow positive at that point in time, and we are now actually. And but that'll give us making some money, if you will, more serious money.
And just a couple of questions on the extension or potential extension. The announcement last week about the completion of the phase 1 drill program, with 5 lots of results in and 5 to come, showing the King veins extending westward. That must be incredibly encouraging to know that there's rich mineralisation further westward from the existing pit.
I'll let Tony answer that one there. Can you swing you around there, Tony?
Thanks, Kev. Sorry if I'm a bit far away, but yeah, no, we're excited about that. The perseverance of this system is really surprising us, and you know, it works out that it's heading in the right direction for our future plans, with the underground portal and everything being there as well. So we'll be looking at how best we can bring that into the forward. So we'll be revising the feasibility this year, and based off a new resource we'll do in the next month to 6 weeks. Kev, I think, touched on an important point, is that that low-grade halo that's around the high grade in the current pit. We're mining that anyway, and it adds quite a few 100,000 tons of metal to the thing, which again changes the economics quite a bit. So we're looking forward to rerun all this and come up with some new numbers to report on soon.
And Tony, in that map you showed earlier, where the pit is in situation to the other potential zones, it's quite a large area now that this is expanding well beyond what the original pit looked like years ago. What do you think that means in terms of this location as a significant global tungsten mine?
Again, we're dealing with such a small part of the global resources we know it today, drilled out resources, that, you know, and knowing how far we can go, the potential's huge here. This is certainly a world-class deposit. It's got world-class grades, so which makes it economic. As Kev said, we're in that lower quartile. It's because of the grade of the tungsten we have, and you know, we'll be hanging there no matter what the price of tungsten is, really. But that extension you see there on the slide, that's potentially, you know, adding another 8 million tons into the open cut rock, whereas we're taking 15 now. So you can see just that extra 10 holes added quite another 25-30% estimate at this point. But those aren't quantified numbers. We'll have a proper resource done externally by measured shortly. And
grade is king, Tony, as they say. Kevin, we might just finish up on that slide. The development timeline slide was one of the better ones I've seen, showing approvals process and your operations pretty keenly, and that gives shareholders something to look forward to. And perhaps just give a final summary as you walk through that.
Yep. Yep. Sorry, I'm just trying to find what slide number that is. Peter, do you know what that is?
Oh, was it 34, the development?
Yeah, it should be down around there somewhere. Sure. Oh, no, it must be back up. Apologize, but yeah, that area, Peter, is something, like I said, the only outstanding part is this the approval for the waste dump. So we're actively, like I said, you have to do your homework for this, right? And that's what it's there's nothing. The government has been working with us since the day we got here, and the Department of Environment, they like this project. It's a showpiece for them using the recycled aggregates. The government has invested into this. I don't see any problem with this permit. Like I said, we've been pre-engaged with them on what needs to be done. So a year ago, they said, I want to see monitoring wells. I want to see where you're putting your waste stockpiles. I want to make sure that there's no penetration into groundwater, no acid drainage. So we've done all our homework, and that's what comes on. But again, I think, you know, if you go back and look at the presentations, we kind of been ticking these boxes off, and you've been seeing the same slide as we go, right? And the next one will be really the underground. I'll start expanding this out to the next piece of development now, right? And what does this look like? How long does the open pit go for? And that's when the big money starts to come in, right? Once we start expanding these resources. And then, like I keep saying, I anticipate after the next round here, we should be 100+ million market cap fairly easy. There's no reason why we shouldn't be. The numbers all justify, you know, 150 million market cap easy. So I think that's our next stop, is just get the resources, get a bit more longer life in. And again, we're Tony's exploration looks really encouraging in the area, and we're always keeping our eye out for opportunity in the tin and tungsten business globally as well.
Terrific. That's a great slide for us to finish on, something for shareholders to look forward to, and we'll keep bringing the news to them. Tony and Kevin, thank you for your time this morning up in North Queensland. Thanks for everybody joining us here today. As Kevin said, if you have further questions, please email them through to peter@nwrcommunications.com.au, and I'll make sure that they get through to Kevin. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.